Around the globe, critical infrastructure is under constant cyber attack. These sophisticated attacks target the backbone of our society. SIP Cyber is a platform offering training and certifications, up-to-date industry information, expert opinions, community engagement, and other valuable resources to train both OT and IT professionals in protecting critical infrastructure. If you're looking to safeguard your organization's critical infrastructure, or advance your professional growth in cybersecurity, look no further than sipcyber.com. Join us today to become SIP Cyber certified and help secure our critical infrastructure. Visit us at sipcyber.com. This webinar is proudly sponsored by OpsWatch.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Irfan, Shakeel, and I'm absolutely delighted to be your host for today's session. And today we have a very special guest joining us, an expert in the field of OT cybersecurity, John Kingsley. Together, John and I, we will be diving into the important topics such as the real-world OT cybersecurity incident, and we will try to uncover how these incidents occur, their impacts, and their measures, special measures that can be taken to mitigate these cyber threats. However, before we embark on this journey, I would love to get to know you all a little bit better. So if you could please type in your name and the location from you are joining us, and the most important thing, what do you want to learn today? So drop everything in the comment, which you can see on your right side, and welcome again. And while you are doing this introduction, let me reassure you that your participation is not only welcome here, but encouraged throughout this session. So please feel free to post your questions, share your experiences, and contribute to the discussion in the chat. This is your platform to learn, engage, and network together. And now I would like to move on to John to understand, or to, first of all, I would like to know, or I would like John to share some of his background information, like what he has been doing, and some other things. However, before John, before moving to you, I would like to just give another heads up that, guys, if you are active in the world of OT or ICS cybersecurity, you may already know John, because he has been very active, and he has been running several active groups online. So over to you, John. Just give us some background information.
Right. Nice to be here, Irfan. I really like this opportunity to share my knowledge with everyone here. Very briefly about me, I have around 16 years of experience in different industry sectors: oil and gas, marine, steel manufacturing, bit of consulting, and so on. And the last 8 years, I have been into OT cybersecurity. I'm an electronics and instrumentation engineer by profession and education, and I transitioned into OT cybersecurity. In my experience, I have done audits. I have developed cybersecurity guidelines and documentation, and also worked on incident response and remediation. So that's very briefly about me. Over to you, Irfan.
That's great. I mean, amazing. So, meaning that we will not be able to only understand the cyber attack, but we will be able to understand from the incident responder perspective as well. That's great. So let's quickly jump into the topic. And I see that a lot of people are commenting, which is that is great. So hello everyone. Hello, I see Yulia, Ronald, Sad, Lean, a lot of people. Hello, everyone. So keep on posting the relevant questions so that we will be able to answer. It's an interactive session. So let's just move forward. And to start the session, I would definitely like to discuss one of the important, or I must say the most notorious cyber incident happened. And let's quickly jump into that. Yeah, Industroyer. So, the today we spotlight this Industroyer attack. Especially, I would like to give some background information. So on December 17, 2016, this sophisticated malware struck in Kyiv, Ukraine, And the immediate effect was a 1 hour blackout affecting a fifth of the capital city. More than just disruption, the attack is considered a large scale test underscoring the formidable threats such malware present to critical infrastructure worldwide. And I would definitely like to discuss the technicalities and the technical aspect of this particular attack or malware. However, before we dive into the technicalities, John, if you can give some background information, some brief information about this incident. What was it? How it happened?
Right. So before we go into details, uh, when we speak about OT cybersecurity attacks, it's also called as cyber physical threat, right? And the landscape changed after incidents called Stuxnet in 2011 and Black Energy in 2015, um, with where the researchers discovered about cyber physical attack and how it is done. So when we speak about Industroyer, it is particularly dangerous threat since it is capable of controlling the electricity substation, switches, and the circuit breakers directly. So it manipulates the industrial communication protocols. So this is very briefly about it.
Okay, let's say if we want to understand that how it happened. For example, what was the flow of the attack and the kill chain specifically. So maybe you would like to give some information on this, and let me, for example, share the kill chain. So maybe you would like to explain it more before you we dive into that. Maybe some more technical information you'd like to share.
Yeah. So, okay. So when we talk about Industroyer, it is a configurable and it included four modules, and each was designed to manipulate one of the four industrial protocols. Uh, I'll just name out these in case if you do not understand. Maybe I'll share it in the chat as well. These are IEC 60870 101 and similarly IEC 70870 and IEC 61850, which is predominantly used in the power sector, and OLE for process control data access. So these were the four protocols. So Industroyer is, as I mentioned, it's a modular malware, meaning that is made up of different components. So these components work together to disable the critical components of the power grid, such as circuit breakers and relay. So there are different techniques that can be used to access the OT or ICS systems. So these kind of techniques that are normally used, especially in this malware, is exploiting the vulnerabilities in the Windows operating system, using phishing emails to trick users into clicking on the malicious links, and using USB drivers to deliver the malware to the target system. So once Industroyer has gained access to a system, it begins to disable critical components of the power grid. So this is done by sending the commands to the system that controls the components. So coming to the kill chain, um, before I share
Yeah.
a couple of other points. So if you see the
Uh,
malicious
John,
actor,
I'm sorry
yes.
to I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I can see a very interesting question which I believe that you have already answered, but maybe you would like to give it some more information on this. Somebody's saying that what does modular malware means? Maybe because online and especially if someone is coming from the IT background, we have only heard malware. So modular malware. So can you please explain it further?
Right. So modular malware means using um, number of different exploits, right? And it is not just one single piece of software. So it is multiple layers of programming code. For example, it could be a combination of multiple malware together, especially this famous malware called Eternal Blue. So it's a
Mhm.
combination of multiple malware basically written into a single code, which executes each steps. One good example is enabling the control and command and control center. So I'll share a little bit more on that. So if you can all see the attack kill chain that is present in the slide. So you
Mhm.
see the malicious actor is able to uh, gain entry using various different methods. So usually it is always the weakest link, as in social engineering through phishing and so on. So once
Mhm.
they are inside, uh, the whoever the victim is, they are able to gain access. So in this case, they were able to gain access to the SCADA terminal or the engineering station, because the victim used his official laptop or workstation to click on such link, and the Industroyer here activates and utilizes the protocol to communicate, right? So when this happens, it automatically infects the other workstations around. And here at that time, this was new, and the firewall rules weren't uh, able to uh, deny this or filter this, because it looked like a genuine
Mhm.
industrial communication protocol. And another thing was, once they were into the workstation, they were able to create multiple backdoors, right? So
Mhm.
this was again new. Normally it is just one entry point, and from there they go, but here they were able to create multiple backdoors, in case if one is found, or they were through somehow,
Uh-huh.
right, it happens.
It's like multiple backdoor channel, multiple
Yes.
for multiple communication. Interesting.
Right,
Interesting.
right. And the sophistication here, if we see, is it was able to set up a command and control center, wherein it was able to communicate through a remote server, and get additional code or malware uh, to be downloaded into the system. And this is the way, right? Like, normal malware probably can't do
Yeah.
every other thing, right? So they were able to download this, and this was like a specialist piece of code, where only competent engineers or those who are knowledgeable with the OT devices can do this.
Mhm.
So they were able to gain access into the Siemens devices, and based on that they were able to operate and interfere with the various electrical hardware, causing the power disruption. So Industroyer malware also has the ability to erase data from the target system. So this
Mhm.
makes it difficult for the defenders to recover from the attack, because it doesn't leave any evidence, or it doesn't leave any evidence that they were there. And
Mhm.
the thing is, normally when we talk about malware attacks, it's usually done by credentials that are stolen or something like that. But here they were able to use legitimate accounts to manipulate the industrial control process as an authorized user, right? So
Mhm.
this added again other difficulties as well. So the industrial was able to be installed in a system within the industrial network, and then leverage the industrial protocols themselves to manipulate the electrical systems. And as I mentioned earlier, it was able to download the payload um,
Mhm.
that was able to manipulate this uh, Siemens hardware.
Okay, interesting. So it's like a series of exploits. Not just one exploit, or the malware went into the system and then it connected to the remote server and downloaded for further exploit codes, and then performed the action on the system.
Right.
Again, very sophisticated. So one question, and one interesting question, and so I see that so many people have asked the similar question, is that between that initial entry to the SCADA system, to the SCADA operator. So usually what happens that the engineering workstation and SCADA operator, they are ideally or technically they should be on a separate network and should be segmented, and the SCADA should not be connected with the outside world through internet. So what happened in this scenario?
Right. So in this case, uh, it wasn't connected to the internet, actually. It was compromised by the person who was working uh, in the substation, or in the facility. So his workstation was basically compromised, and
uh,
when he connected to the network, it further was able to
yeah,
escalate.
spread
And
further. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Anyway, so definitely it was one of the notorious attack, I must say, after probably Stuxnet, because Stuxnet was the beginning of the cyber attack in the the OT or industrial segments. Anyway, so however, this one, it also had a great global implication, especially if even, for example, if we will not look into the Russian-Ukraine war from that perspective, it had a very great implication, global implication. So, in your opinion, what were the or what are the global implications of this attack?
Right. So, yeah. So when we talk about global implications, there are many, but I'll just focus on the key aspects. So what happened was it increased the awareness of such kind of vulnerabilities that exist in the OT systems, right? And this kind of motivated more investment into the OT cybersecurity. And again, it brought focus into the various cybersecurity policies, procedures, practices worldwide. Basically,
Mhm.
this Ukraine power grid attack was a wake up call for the world, and it highlighted the vulnerability of such OT systems to such cybersecurity attacks. Basically, because it raised concerns about how secure they are, and as a result of this attack, there has been increased awareness. Right now, we
Mhm.
have it's almost 8 9 years, and compared to then and now, there are a lot of security technologies and the policies in terms of regulations or the national guidelines, all has been tremendously changed. So basically it led to changes in the cybersecurity practices worldwide, and now
Mhm.
organizations are more aware about such kind of vulnerabilities and to patch them. And they are also very careful about opening emails, clicking on the links from unknown senders, right?
Yeah, definitely. See, I'm coming from IT security background, and I must say that this attack and all the relevant attack, these were the wake up calls basically, and because of these cyber attacks, people are now started to focus on the OT's cyber security, because previously people were not really into that OT security, but now government, private sector, and organizations, everybody's emphasizing on the OT cyber security. And even people are learning, and people are learning, they want to get into OT cybersecurity, and that's why we are having this educational webinar here to shed further light on this. And anyway, let's move forward, and let's talk about the uh, you know attribution. So for example, what happens that mostly in the IT, scenario, whenever a hacker or a group of hacker, they attack a particular service, they let's say they use a ransomware attack, and they claim this, like they attribute that attack. Or if somebody is not even claiming the attack, the law enforcement agencies, the organizations, they can associate this, or they can give the attribution. So in terms of this Industroyer or the attack on the Ukrainian, grid station or power station, what are the attribution? How, to
Right.
whom to say?
Yeah. So when we talk about cyber attacks, it's quite challenging because one thing is there are criminals, then there are uh, advanced persistent threats, and there are state-sponsored APTs. So it is very difficult, right? And there are a number of challenges because they use proxies and other obfuscation techniques, the lack of visibility again into the OT networks, and uh, this is not isolated to one organization in one country, right? So the lack of cooperation between different governments, that is the key. So when we talk about Ukraine power grid attack, this was attributed to a group of hackers known as Sandworm, and Sandworm is supposed to be backed by the Russian government, uh, right? And the thing is, attribution is very important because once we know it is attributed to a particular group or so on, it can help to prevent such future attacks. And also try to approach this legally, right? So that
Yeah.
their infrastructure and everybody involved is taken down.
Makes sense. Okay, moving on. I see another important or interesting question. So, and I think this question we could have eventually or will be eventually, discussing. So, somebody says that what could they have done to prevent such an attack? Could they have seen the attack coming?
Maybe then it was not possible because awareness was at an all-time low, and those were the 2010 to 2015. um a lot of things which we didn't expect to happen, right? um, and OT systems started becoming a target, and especially
Mhm.
geopolitics is a key here, right? And to prevent such attacks, first thing is user awareness training. Cybersecurity is not only for the cybersecurity department or the IT security or the OT security. It's for the whole organization. Everybody working in the company should be aware about the basic risks and so on. So probably if the person who had been using uh, um, the USB or clicking on the link, if he or she had been aware, probably this could have
Mhm.
been averted in
Yeah,
its
yeah.
starting stage. And at that time they could have not seen it coming, and probably these people were in the system for almost 6 to 7 months before they actually did the attack. That was what happened. But nowadays we have technologies where we can detect such kind of intrusions, right? So it is possible. We have security operation centers, we have security information event management and so on. So there are various tools, techniques, solutions to detect such kind of um things happening in real time.
So, I would like to give my, 2 cents on this question. So, see, uh, they couldn't able to see it coming because the threat intelligence, especially focusing on the OT environment, was not there at that time when it happened. So, threat intelligence, the way we see in the IT security is different. Like we have a lot of indicator of compromises. We have the sophisticated system now protecting the IT infrastructure at that time. Now OT is more developing. We are seeing advancement. We are seeing that the threat intelligence platforms are now coming. However, previously when these attack happened, the threat intelligence was not there. We did not, or we, as a whole, as a world, we did not have this sophisticated system to protect the infrastructure from these sort of cyber attacks. So that's why the incoming, I don't think so that it was possible at that time. Prevention, yes, as John says that even in this attack, the human factor was very important, and still is very important. So the role of human factor to protect the similar attack is still there. So, John, would you like to give a further light on the role of human factor? Because again, this is
Yeah,
even for me,
right.
this is something I personally like to know or personally like to discuss or talk about.
Right. So yeah, I think partly I did answer this when I replied to the question earlier. So see, in these kind of cyber attacks, human factors and the different process control vulnerabilities played a very significant role in enabling the overall Ukraine power grid attack. Basically, the attackers were able to gain access to the OT systems by exploiting the vulnerabilities in the Windows operating system, and they were also able to trick users into clicking on the malicious links in the phishing emails. Right. So, in addition, the process control systems that was used by the Ukrainian power grid were not properly configured, and this made them more vulnerable to the attack. And the lessons from this Ukraine power grid attack is very clear. OT ICS security is very essential for ensuring the safety and reliability of the critical infrastructure. So, organizations must take steps to protect their OT systems from attack, and they also must educate their employees about cybersecurity threats.
Interest, definitely. So, okay, so let's get jump into the second attack because It's quite interesting to know all these, I must not say story, but it's a fact, fact. So before I jump into that, I have one more question for you. It says, and it's very interesting. Maybe people would like to know that how is OT security different from IT security? Maybe somebody has asked this because I was referring to IT security whenever I was saying something. So maybe, but it's this one is a very interesting question.
Right. Okay. So, is it the question? How is OT security different from IT
Yeah, how
security?
OT security is different from IT.
Right. So, see, the difference lies in um, the common things that we see, right? Like IT security is about protecting our data, protecting our systems, right? And when we talk about OT, it's about protecting the cyber physical systems uh, operating safely, and
Mhm.
their availability is important. And because if either safety could lead to a explosion or the people working on the site, right, and availability, of course, if the manufacturing or the process plant is disrupted, it could lead to business losses and of course reputation and so on. So at a fundamental level, this is how it is different, because in IT, we can reboot, or we can there can be any downtime, but in cyber physical systems, especially OT, that is not possible, right? Like we cannot reboot the system during the operation. It could lead to adverse effect, and especially in the OT systems, they need to safely shut down, right? If they
Mhm.
do not safely shut down, it could lead to adverse effects. Because of that, there could be gas leaks or fires and so
Yeah.
on.
The human life is on stake in the industrial systems, and availability, as you mentioned, is very important. The OT environment, definitely. All right, now let's shift our focus now to another notable cyber incident, the German steel plant attack of 2014. And just to give you some brief information, guys, in this instance, highly sophisticated malware targeted the industrial control systems of a blast furnace at a steel plant in Germany. And that attack led to an improper shutdown of the furnace, basically a destabilizing event that resulted in massive damage. And this incident serves as a stark example of how cyber attack can cross the digital world into the physical world, causing significant and tangible harm. And as we dive into this incident further, let's explore the details of the attack, and let's understand, or let's see the lesson learned. So, John, what's your take on the German, steel plant attack? Some brief information, background information.
Right. So when we talk about this German steel plant, the cyber attack was carried out using a combination of spear phishing emails and malware. So the attackers first sent spear phishing emails to the employees at the plant, and these emails contained malicious attachments. So when opened, they installed malware on the employees' computers, and this malware that was installed on the employees' computers was designed to steal credentials, and it gave attackers the access to the plant's IT network. So once the attackers had access to the IT network, they were able to move laterally into the plant's OT network, right? And once the attackers then use the malware to gain control of the plant's blast furnace. And the details a bit sketchy here, because people say that this was not a cyber attack and so on, but hopefully in future we'll know. But from the data that is available, the attackers were able to manipulate the furnace control and cause it to overheat and shut down. So if for people who are not aware about a blast furnace, it is the most important part of steel making. That is the basically heart. That's where all the ore is melted into iron, and iron and other means like steel and other things are separated and so on. So so
Mhm.
that so from there, uh, basically it caused physical damage to the furnace, and it caused the production to be halted at the plant.
So, if I'm not mistaken, or if I haven't misheard you, the start of this attack is still the human weakness. So it
Correct.
again started with the same, right?
Right. See, majority of the issues that we see, of course, the softwares, the operating system, the hardware may have vulnerabilities. There's always some zero-day vulnerabilities there. There are a lot of vulnerabilities that are still not patched when we talk about OT systems. But ultimately, to exploit that vulnerability, they need access into the system, right? And humans are always the weakest link. That's something that I could personally stress from my experience doing the various audits.
Makes sense. Human again, the first lines of line of defense and the weakest link as well. This is
Right.
what I say every time.
Right.
I see Krishna is asking, do we get the recording? Yes, of course, you'll get the recording of the webinar and all the information that we are discussing, all the even this PDF which I'm showing on the screen. So don't worry about it. And another interesting question. It says that if we separate OT network from IT network, that might help. Maybe I would like to give my 2 cents on this, that we used to, and still in some organization, maybe in some part of the world, we are still, keeping the OT environment separate from IT. However, the IT and OT convergence is growing now, and IT and OT convergence, it has its own unique advantages. Just like it improves the efficiency, it gives a lot of control over the environment. You can monitor remotely, all these good things about the OT IT conversion. However, OT and IT convergence has its drawback as well, and most important is again the cyber attacks, because cyber attack on the IT environment can lead or can cause can basically or could be a cause to the cyber attack on the OT network. And in some event, it happened that the cyber criminals, they compromised the IT infrastructure first, and from IT they move towards the OT environment. So hopefully this answers the question. John, if you would like to give some further information on this, maybe some information on the air gap network, uh, why the traditional air gap network, we cannot see these in the modern industrial system now.
Right. So air gapped networks is basically a myth. There is no uh, a network that is air gapped. Even if you have air gapped networks,
Mhm.
there is always something that can go wrong, right? Like people using a corrupted USB or software. There are various ways to penetrate such kind of thing, and Stuxnet, that's what happened. So the best way is to securely interface and protect them, right? So OT network has its own requirements, IT network has its own requirements. So when we talk about OT, there are various concepts that are explained by the standard IEC 62443 in terms of security zones and conduits and so on. And that's the first layer of defense. And of course, you need firewalls and other hardware and solutions that you can add as a multiple layers, right? And of course the use of demilitarized zone, using jump hosts, using antivirus solutions, whitelisting applications, backup and recovery is important. So separating the IT network and OT network, and going about a risk based approach is the way to go.
Interesting. So separating IT from OT, but again, you have also mentioned that we cannot completely separate. However, we can do with the help of segmentation and some other architectural, changes and policies, especially. What one question are, although we are getting out of the topic, we are not really discussing that how this attack happened, but it's interesting that people are asking a very relevant question. One thing is the zero trust. So how zero trust can now protect the OT environment, or how we can implement the zero trust in the OT system?
See, zero trust. when we speak about OT, there are some challenges, but it is not impossible, because anything, in say any interface, any communications is considered um, untrusted, right? So I think that's the way to go, especially when we talk about OT to IT interfaces and convergence. No doubt about that. But within the plant networks, uh, zero trust may not work always, because the field level devices doesn't have any encryption or any security features, so there are certain challenges. So we need to see, based on our requirement, what will help. And probably when we are um, moving away from the OT networks to an external network, to the internet, to the cloud, or to the enterprise systems, in that kind of scenario, zero trust approach might be helpful. And there are hardwares and solutions that can help. uh, uh,
Okay, the zero trust, basically infrastructure.
yes,
Um, okay, I would definitely like to go back to or come back to the topic. One thing on the chat, I see Suhaib is saying that explain the Purdue model. I believe that we probably will be needing an entire session on Purdue model, because
right.
it has all the layers, and from zero to we'll have to explain all single layers and which devices come into this. So yeah, what I will do, especially for this, or this is a very interesting question. So what I
Right.
will do
What I'll do
probably,
is, maybe we can have a different session, but I'll just give a quick one-line statement. So
yeah.
this Purdue model basically provides a framework. It's a model. It shouldn't be considered as a network architecture. So this framework is for segmenting the industrial control system network from the corporate enterprise networks and the internet. So this was the baseline model that was used in various standards, IEC 62443, NIST 882, and so on. So the use of podium model is basically a reference model for the data flow from the level 0 to the enterprise levels.
Mhm. I hope that it answers your question, Suhaib. Okay, now going back to the German steel plant cyber incident, John, I definitely like to understand the significance of this attack. Why? I mean, why it's important and how it basically changed the perspective, or the way we look at the IT, OT and ICS security.
Right. So when in this particular case, uh, it was quite significant because this happened around in possibly 2013, 14, sometime, and uh, at those days, uh, it was not known that a cyber attack on OT systems can cause tremendous physical damage, right? This basically
Mhm.
changed that perception, where a target can be disrupted through some kind of physical damage. Secondly, it also showed very clearly that OT systems are just as vulnerable to attack as IT systems. And third, it highlighted the potential of cybersecurity threats to cause physical damages in OT system. So basically, the lessons that we learned from this cyber attack is OT security is essential for ensuring the safety and reliability of critical infrastructure, right? And organizations must take steps to protect these critical systems from attack, because
Mhm.
uh, especially when we talk about at a national level, all this combination of multiple infrastructures are known as critical infrastructure, right? Transportation,
Yeah.
industry, and so on. So it could almost impact the nation's economy uh, over an attack. So again,
Definitely.
training and education,
And
that's the way to go.
yeah, and government throughout the world, not only in the US, or in European countries, in Asian countries as well, the government are now emphasizing on protecting the their critical assets, especially the transportation, communication system, military and defense, chemical and health and financial institutions. and it's very important because at the end of the day, nation relies on the critical infrastructure. Anyway, so let's move forward. And I again, I'm so afraid that we might run out of time. That's why I'm going into the next attack. It's quite interesting, John. I mean, it's really interesting. So the next that I would like to cover is uh, I'm afraid that I might mispronounce, but it's Triton malware attack, right?
That's right,
That's
Triton.
correct.
That's right.
And Triton, I mean, let's dive into the Triton. I have some background information, and as far as the background information is concerned, I know that for the fact that this malware attack happened in 2017 and it happened in Saudi Arabia. So Triton is again a very or highly sophisticated piece of malware, and it's known for its basically capacity to disable the safety instrumented systems, meaning that it's really disabled the safety instrument, all the system. And basically such disruption can lead to disastrous consequences at industrial facilities. And that's why this malware called the world's most murderous malware. And in this particular incident, the safety systems of an unidentified power station were compromised. The targeted technology was the Traconus Industrial Safety System by Schneider Electric. And this attack is widely believed to have been state sponsored, showcasing the increasing complexity and severity of threats in the cyberspace. Now let's deep dive into this malware. And before I start, asking relevant questions, John, I would like to know the background information, some brief information about this, malware.
Right. So, like you mentioned, this is a very sophisticated piece of malware that is specifically designed to target industrial safety systems. So, within OT systems, there are different types of systems, right? Probably that we need another training session similar. So we have DCS, we have fire and gas systems, then we have safety systems. So here the safety systems was the target. So again, the malware is modular, meaning it was made up of number of different components, and these components work together to disable the safety system and cause a physical accident. And very surprisingly, this Triton malware was very stealthy, so it was able to evade any detection by the security software, and it was able to communicate with the attackers command and control servers remotely.
And I mean, it seems that unlike from the IT infrastructure, most of the attacks on the OT infrastructure, almost all of them are very sophisticated because it's not the hit and run case. Just like in some of the IT cyber attack, what happens that the attackers most of the time, script kiddies, they use some scripts, or they buy some script from dark sites or darknet, and they use it. It's in this scenario, or in most of the scenarios that we have been discussing, all the attacks were well planned and well executed, and were hidden from the security system. So it's all very sophisticated. And I see that. Okay, so John, you replied on the chat. I was about to say the state sponsored which state. Okay, so you can see that people talk about. Maybe John, you would like to give some information on this.
Right. So how does it work? So when we speak about the design and how it was executed, uh, so this Triton, it came a year after Industroyer, and it was the first malware to target a safety system. This is known. So the implications here, right? Like similar to the German steel and the Industroyer, the cyber physical attack was basically designed to cause a physical disruption. And normally a well designed system will always have some kind of safety controls to prevent any kind of hazardous situation from arising, right, in a normal operation. So the potential here to disrupt or disable these controls could basically enable a full physical impact of a cyber attack. And
And
when we
that's
speak about the malware itself,
Yeah, and that's why
yes.
probably it's called murderous malware, because it was
Right,
directly linked or targeting the physical world,
right.
especially the safety
Right.
of the human.
That's true. That's true. So the malware itself was very simple. It contained a compiled Python script with two embedded executables and the two externally linked executables. So that was what this malware consists of. And basically, when we look at the components that were embedded, it enabled uh, the to replace the logic with the safety controller, and the external components basically provided new logic from the remote server to replace it. So what happened was the code was so stealthy and so small, because it was able to connect to a remote server and download a new code which contained the logic. So at a high level, this Triton is uh, very unique and very different, because it was targeting a safety systems. But again, see, in such kind of situation, it needs to be effective, right? So it requires enormous amount of uh, early stage attack activity. Basically, what this means is the attacker must first understand the target infrastructure, and then should be able to successfully install some kind of capability that we call as command and control within that
Mhm.
environment, right? So the multiple steps they were able to successfully do this, and because of this, uh, what happens is they were able to operate from a system that is capable of communicating with the target controller. So
Mhm.
because this stage basically requires some effort, right? To normally when we talk about the OT systems, uh, the safety controllers or the safety systems are always very secured. They have multiple layers and so on. Now probably there's more awareness. Probably at that time, there was no defense or layers to prevent that from happening.
Mhm.
And once the attacker was able to get into the target, the thing is the needing of the customized logic, right? This was they were able to do this. So
when
basic.
when you say the customized logic, so one thing is clear that in this particular attack the ISIS control logic was changed with their own logic. They use
Right,
their own code. Okay.
right,
So and they use that to basically disable the entire safety system, right?
correct. That's right.
Okay.
So basically, the what was the outcome of the attack? Like, of course, there was disruption in the plant, but the result was they were able to alter the logic rather than manipulating industrial protocols like last time, what we saw in Industroyer. So
Hmm.
this is what differentiates between Industroyer and Triton. There, they manipulated the communication protocols to infiltrate the malware application to the OT systems. Here, they eh, they were able to get access. Then they were able to remotely communicate. Then get a new piece of code, update the code on the controller so that uh, it it does abnormal operation.
Yeah, it behaves the way they want it to be behaved.
Right.
By using their own code. Again, very dangerous. I mean, it's just sound dangerous that you'll be able to remotely control a controller, and then you can remove the existing function, you can install your own function. Very dangerous. I mean, I cannot even imagine. Anyway, so I mean, you have discussed the sys or the safety instrumented systems, and you have explained that how it happened, how they got access to, and how they use their C2 or command and control to replace the existing code with their own malicious program. So now let's talk about the infiltration. Like, I mean,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
maybe.
So this shouldn't have happened, right? Like, but the thing that went wrong here was, uh, see, when we talk about OT systems, um, earlier they used to be black boxes. nowadays they run the same
John, I think you. Oh, I lost John. Maybe some connecting. Oh, he's back now.
software such as Windows OS, Windows Server, and the regular hardware and so on. So in this case, what happened was uh, the malware was able to exploit the vulnerabilities in the Windows OS. So using that, the malware was able to infiltrate it into the safety systems and was able to bypass the safety measures, basically disabling the system. And this allowed the attackers to do what they wanted to do.
And interesting.
See, the thing is, the safety controllers or Triconex, that's how they call. They are basically used in majority of the safety systems worldwide.
J- Uh, John, you are breaking. I think I was about to ask a question, but it seems that you. Okay, guys. Meanwhile, maybe yeah, he's reconnecting. Okay, Stanley, I see that you have mentioned the usual suspect of US. And John, you were breaking, and I was meanwhile, at that time I was looking at
Yeah,
the comments and trying to respond
no
to all the
worries, no
comments.
worries. I'm not sure what is wrong. Uh,
John, one interesting, question, and probably this question's again, it's coming from the IT security background. It says that what countermeasure would be best suited to detect this backdoor, and I'm not sure which backdoor, probably because it's an old question which I can see now. So
right.
maybe
Yeah.
yeah, and the question also says that maybe anomaly detection.
Right. So, yes. So, they have asked the question and they have also answered it. So, anomaly detection has come a long way. And nowadays we have artificial intelligence and machine learning, right? See, because when we talk about signature based detection, it has a lot of limitations. And when we talk about these kind of threats, there's always some kind of evolution, right? Like, uh, and importantly nowadays there's more knowledge about OT systems and so on. So in this case, if we take this Triton malware, people were somehow had access to the plans documents, or they knew what model of the controller was and so on. So that information also additionally helps. So detecting these kind of intrusions is a bit difficult, but modern day anomaly detection, right, like an intrusion prevention system or a intrusion detection system, have come a long way. And they are a very good way to because we know a baseline how our network works, right? If something out of ordinary happens, we will get alert or notification, and we can compare, and immediately someone can go and look. It could be noise, it could be other factors, but at least we have this real time awareness that something is happening, right? So uh, it is not 100% automated, but there is always a need of manual intervention, but it's possible through anomaly detection.
Hmm. Amazing. Sounds good. Okay, now moving on to the next question, and I see a lot of question, but I can handle few. So it says that is there a failed safe systems in place in the
Right,
ICS or OT system?
right. See, when we talk about OT systems, there are systems for normal operation and monitoring. Then there are safety systems for, uh, see, the main purpose that they are is because during design or during construction or during operation, uh, something could go wrong, right? Like due to a manual error or due to wiring or due to some other aspect, something can go wrong. And the safety systems came because of these kind of issues, because in the operation, because of any hazard, there shouldn't the go something wrong and so on. And these are called fail open, fail safe. And so the thing is, they revert to a state where it can safely shut down or safely operate. So there are safety systems in place, but they are mainly focused on the operational hazards and safety related aspects. Nowadays we have more because of being various interconnection with IT and other external networks. We have this issue of cyber threats on the OT system, right? The attack surface has increased. So safety systems alone won't do the job. They need help of OT cybersecurity solutions and hardwares and so on. So to your
Makes sense.
answer your question, there are safety systems, but they themselves won't prevent the cyber attacks or cyber threats.
Okay, another, I see the similar question which we have already, I think, answered, like the major difference between OT and IT, and I think we have answered that already. Khairul, if you probably may have missed that part. However, don't worry, you'll get the recording of the session and you can go back to see. John, I really hate to say I definitely want to discuss more attacks. However, I'm afraid that if I go to the next attack, we might not be able to cover it, given the time frame. However, I would like you to summarize this Triton, attack, and I personally I want to understand that what could have been, done, like, what could have happened, like the worst case scenario. What do you see?
So see, when we talk about this Triton, um, it is something that changed the OT cybersecurity industry overnight, right? Because this was a very significant event. Probably the field of security, uh, IT community might know, right? Because it highlighted the vulnerability of OT systems, more specifically the safety systems within the OT systems. It shows that cyber attacks can have a real world impact, and fortunately because of a bug in the software in the safety systems, uh, they shut down, or it could have been a very severe consequences, and it could have led
Mhm.
to a major catastrophe. So unfortunately, because of the bug, the system automatically shut down. The attackers were not entirely successful, right? They were able to modify the code and manipulate the safety system, but very fortunately a major chemical explosion or a fire or a loss of life or a disruption of operation didn't happen.
Mhm. Interesting. Okay, so I think we should take another question. And Birkha says, doesn't the zero-day protection applicable to OT system means, like, zero-day attack or zero-day malware attack? What do you have to say about it?
I'm not sure if I understand the question right. It mentions, doesn't the zero day protection applicable to OT systems? I'm not sure entirely what that it is, but we know something called zero day vulnerability. So when we talk about zero day vulnerability,
Probably
these are
yeah, probably, a user meant to say that the existing security system, most of the cases fail to prevent these attacks. So probably these were the these were exploiting the zero-day vulnerability. So I think
right.
this is a question.
Right. So zero day vulnerability means the vulnerability is not known, right? That is why it is called zero day. If it falls into the wrong hands, uh, they can use it for any malicious purposes. And these are challenges that we have to live with. That is why we have a risk based approach, right? And if you have the basics in place as IEC 62443 standard or NIST standard, or at least the good practices, I think to an extent um, you can mitigate this attack. Maybe not entirely, but you can limit the damage, right? You might have some countermeasures, some mitigations, and so on.
Makes sense. Okay, all right. So I think, let's try to wrap up now. Let's call it a day, and let's try to see if we can get more question. We have few more minutes left. John, would you like to give some, verdicts about the OT, that the growing since the cyber attacks are happening a lot, and they are targeting the industrial control system, not only just the industrial control system, the entire critical infrastructure throughout the world. So what, in your opinion, what we should do to prevent such attacks?
Right. So, see, um, there is no like 100% security, right? Like, uh, we need to have an open mind, but that doesn't mean that we don't do anything about it. First thing, be it IT or be it OT cybersecurity, especially after seeing all these attacks, the first thing should be learning about it, so that the same thing doesn't happen. Unfortunately, that is what is happening now. We need to learn from these incidents, otherwise what is the
Mhm.
purpose, right? So knowing what happened and how to prevent these kind of attacks from happening again, so that should be a first step. And more awareness, more training to all the people. This is the
Mhm.
key. Again, I'm stressing this again and again, because uh, we don't seem to be learning from all these incidents and what happened, right? Because just because you have some fancy software or hardware, it's not going to solve your problems. You need to know how to operate it. So you
Yeah,
need to know if it is the right fit. And if you are not educated or aware about it, I think you have lost already. And
yeah,
take a look at the standards, right? They give a lot of guidance how to build your cybersecurity management systems. Start with developing your policies, develop some procedures. Then the next step is training your employees, uh, overall. And those who are working, they probably need more knowledge. They need to have the right tools in their hand to uh, not prevent but manage, right? It's not always
yeah,
about
to
prevention,
protect. Yeah.
it's also about defense here, right? So I think
Resilience,
this is the
basically.
way
Yeah.
to go. Yeah, this is the way to go.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, John. Thanks for sharing the insightful information. Not the just the general OT security, but also the technical details of all of the three attacks that we have discussed. And again, each of these incidents has brought to the fore the pressing need for robust cyber resilience in our OT environment. And as the cyber threats grow in complexity, so too should our strategies and defenses as well. I want to thank you all for your active participation and insightful contribution to the discussion. It's my hope that you leave this session not only with a deeper understanding of OT cyber incidents, but also with our valuable insights to apply in your own context. Stay safe and stay vigilant. And thank you, John, again for appearing and for giving the technical information. Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to see you guys in the next session as well. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everyone.